the meeting to order. Just a quick announcement that fargogrowthplan.org is our website for our Fargo Growth Plan update that the city is working on. And there's going to be open houses held on Tuesday and Wednesday on the 17th and 18th. There's a couple different options for you to be involved, or you can go on fargogrowthplan.org. So we encourage everybody in the audience and everybody online to take advantage of that opportunity to talk about where you see the future of Fargo as we use the growth plan for almost everything we do here. So we appreciate your input. Otherwise, commissioners, look for a motion to approve the order of agenda.
So moved.
Motion, is there a second?
Second.
Motion and second, any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Item B, the minutes of our September 7th meeting. Is there a motion to approve or any changes?
So moved.
The motion, is there a second?
Second.
Motion and second, any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Moving on to our public hearing items. Number 1, we'll ask Donald up to the podium here to introduce it.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Donald Kress of the Department of Planning and Development. Our first item is the Meadowview Second Edition, which is located here. This is University Drive South and 70th Avenue. This is edge of Davies High School here. And as you see, looks better in the close-up here, there are a number of lots here that are involved in this subdivision. A little different here. They are along Meadowview Drive South. These pictures are from yesterday. Meadowview Drive South is the only street not yet constructed in this subdivision, and it is under construction here. A couple of different views. These buildings, this building here is this building here. These are not, that building is not in the subdivision. That faces 68th Avenue South. The properties are zoned SR4, single dwelling residential. No zone change is proposed here. But what's happening is the right-of-way, the vacation of right-of-way referred to in your staff report, the right-of-way is getting wider. The street itself will not be any wider, but the right-of-way will be 4 feet wider, and we'll look at a section drawing prepared by our engineering department in a moment. But when we get these somewhat narrower lots, these lots here are being replatted. Some of these overall get a little bit narrower. There's a chart in your staff report that indicates what the differences are. These lots do not change size on this side. But the idea is, as the lots get narrower, you've often seen here and in other towns where it seems like there's not a lot of room between driveways. There's no place to park on the street, even though parking might be allowed. No place to stack the snow. So the idea, this is somewhat of an experiment to try to widen the right-of-way. So here would be our standard 70-foot section for the roadway here. This is the proposed one. So you see the boulevards are 2 feet wider on either side, a 14-foot as well as instead of a 12-foot boulevard, also provides more room for trees there. And so that's what this is really doing. Like I said, that one row of lots is, many of them are getting a little bit narrower, and then the right-of-way is expanding. And then an important feature of this is, as you see these dark dashed lines here, these are negative access easements. And these are to prevent, just like negative access easements always are, to prevent access. So it's going to limit where the driveways are going to go. This is 12 feet on either side here, and they'll be on both sides. They don't show up real well, but they're right there. And this is to provide a guaranteed area where there won't be a driveway intervening in there. So you've always got a straight stretch of 24 feet at least. The developer's working with the city engineer's office to adjust the size of those. They might be a little different configuration on the final version, but that's the idea, to make that work. And the recommended motion is stated in your staff report and shown on the screen. The project representative, John Eunice of Eagle Ridge Development, is with us this afternoon. May wish to address the commission. And again, there's no zone change on this. The lots will all still meet the minimum requirements of the SR4 zone. That concludes staff's presentation, Commissioners. Thank you.
Thank you, Donald. Any questions for Donald? Seeing none, Mr. Eunice? You have anything to add? I have a question for you, but if you want to add anything first.
Yeah, John Eunice with Eagle Ridge Development. I think Donald did a great job explaining kind of the thought process behind this plat. Some of the common complaints that there are with smaller lot sizes are snow storage and parking on the streets, and we're trying to address both of those by increasing the boulevard, giving a bigger area for snow storage, and fixing the driveway locations on each one of these lots to allow for parking on both sides of the street.
Thank you. I just had one question, I guess. I had the pleasure of being on stage with you when we released the MetroCog housing study, and been trying to wonder how we look at all of our plans and things, but maybe we should have a question too about how does your application fit with what the study's telling us we need in the area? Is that too deep of a question for you off the cuff? But
It's a good question. I'll try to answer it as best I can. I think we can recognize from that study that there's definitely a shortage of all types of housing. One area in particular is the more affordable side, the entry-level housing. And this project, this plat, allows for some additional opportunities for new first-time home buyers in South Fargo.
works. Any other questions for the applicant? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Does anyone else in the audience wish to speak to this item? Anyone else? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Commissioners, what are your wishes?
I'll make a motion to approve the staff findings.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, please take the roll.
Shuey,
Aye.
Rosenberg,
Aye.
Morgan,
Aye.
Schmidt,
Aye.
Tassa,
Aye.
Gunkelman,
Aye.
Schneider.
Aye. Motion passes. Moving on to number 2, we have Donald again.
Yes, sir, thank you. Item 2 is the Pines at the District, 4th edition. This is located south of 52nd Avenue South. Here's our landmark Walmart here. And 38th Street here, 42nd Street here. This property, as you see, is undeveloped. There is a business office here, a accountant's office here, and there are apartments down here. And property across here is slowly under development, and this is Happy Harry's as another landmark there for you. I took these pictures this morning. As you see, it is undeveloped. I call this one Sunrise over the Walmart here. So we see the undeveloped property from two different sides here. And there's one important part of this. Small things mean a lot. You will notice here, there's this little piece right here, this little tab right here. And that is important to this plat, even though it's not a property that can really be developed. This is looking at it, it's right in here. It's under this Western Area Power Administration power line easement that cuts through South Fargo. We call it the WAPA easement. That's important to our story in a moment. And then this is the detention basin that's there. Currently, this is on its own lot. It will be incorporated into the new lot. So they'll whittle this down to just 2 lots. The zoning here is LC, limited commercial. This is a combination of 2 different plats, the Pines at the District 3rd edition and the District of Fargo 2nd edition. And each of them has a different conditional overlay. Both have conditional overlays and they're different from each other. And so this plat is sort of a long way for a little bit, because when you look at, we're going to go ahead to this view here, this little piece down here, this little tab, is actually part of this subdivision, so that these 2 have the same CO and these 2 have the same CO. But when the platting is done here, should this go all the way through to approval, this is all going to be one lot, and we don't want to have 2 different conditional overlays on the same lot, especially on a property that you can't really develop. So what's happening with the conditional overlays is when we're done, one of the conditional overlays, 4634, will apply to this lot only. 4688 will apply to this lot only. The actual conditions of the conditional overlay and the standards are not changing at all. It's just sort of a bookkeeping type thing there. And then the plat here again just combines this piece of this lot, the detention basin, and this lot into one. And then this one remains the same size as it is. There's negative access easement, which is left over from the underlying plat here, which restricts access from 38th and the first 150 feet of 53rd. But the properties do have access down here. Regarding the detention basin, that will be on that property. There is an easement here depicted for access, and the city will do the large-scale maintenance of it, but the routine maintenance will be taken care of by the property owner. Again, the LC zoning itself is not changing. And we looked at that. Recommended motion is stated in your staff report and shown on the screen. Mr. Brian Pattengale, professional engineer with Houston Engineering, is with us this afternoon and may wish to address the commission. That concludes staff's presentation. Thank you, commissioners.
Thank you, Donald. Any questions? Seeing none, does the applicant have anything to add?
Afternoon, Commissioners. Brian Pattengale with Houston Engineering. Yeah, as Donald just mentioned, it's basically a cleanup of some old plats. Those two parcels that are kind of left over were left over after a previous plat to the south, sort of for that apartment building in the office complex. So essentially, the owners are trying to clean up some stuff here with this and get it squared away so the lots are developable, essentially. And I'm sure there's questions. I'm here to help.
Thank you. Any questions for the applicant? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Pattengale. Anyone else in the audience wish to speak on this item? Anyone else here to speak on this item? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Commissioners, what are your wishes?
I'll make the motion to accept the findings of staff as presented to us.
The motion, is there a second?
Second.
Motion and second, any discussion? Seeing none, please take the roll.
Gunkelman,
Aye.
Shuey,
Aye.
Morgan,
Aye.
Schmidt,
Aye.
Rosenberg,
Aye.
Tassa,
Aye.
Schneider.
Aye, and the motion passes.
Thank you, commissioners.
Thank you, Donald. Moving on to number 3, we'll ask Brad up to the podium to introduce this.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Brad Garcia with the Planning and Development. Our third item today is called Urban Plains by Brandt 7th Edition. And this is located here next to, or off of Veterans Boulevard on the west. And then you have 32nd Avenue South on the south side. Shields Arena is a prominent landmark here that the subject properties are pretty much located. And then here's just some images of the properties. As you can see, all the properties are undeveloped at this time. Up on the north side, or this top picture, it's facing north. Again, you can kind of see the health center up there, the health club, and Shields is just off to the right. And then on the south here, then you can see Shields Arena in the background there. Zoning for the subject properties currently is limited commercial, and the rezone or the zoning change is actually just repealing the existing conditional overlays that are on the subject properties and then consolidating them into just one conditional overlay that's more of a kind of a cleanup item. Again, there's four conditional overlays that exist over the several properties. And it's being consolidated again just for commercial use, and it contains more of the best practices for development along our key corridors. And then here's an image of the plat. As you can see, there's 3 lots, two lots that are on the southeast corner. Those lots are being platted as developable so that a developer can come in and start building on those lots. The third lot, you'll notice, is a rather large lot, which is a consolidation of the previous or the existing lots into one. And then the existing access easement that connects from Cedar Parkway to Veterans, to 32nd, and to Cedar on the southeast corner is being vacated, and then a new alignment, a road alignment for a private road, is being included on this plat. And additionally, the original plat had right-of-way for roundabouts, and that's up kind of where it connects with Cedar Parkway, and on the north corner or north side, and then on the east side. And those are being vacated, and and consolidated with the properties, the subject properties. Again, those roundabouts, a traffic study was provided and approved by traffic engineering that those roundabouts are no longer needed based on the traffic or anticipated traffic for the development. So those are, again, being vacated for that reason. Tim Gleason with Gleason Companies is with us today to answer any questions the commission may have. Staff has received a couple inquiries on this case, and there was no opposition, just more of just general inquiry into what the project was about. Pending any questions, the recommended motion is on your screen, and that concludes staff's presentation.
Thank you, Brad. Any questions? Go ahead.
Brad, is there a traffic study on this too?
There is a traffic study. I don't believe that was included in the packet. I think that was more a prerequisite in order to move forward with the vacation of the right-of-way.
Okay. Is the easements, the new negative easements, those are coming in on Veterans on 32nd?
Correct. Yeah, there's a little bit of change to the negative access easements, and that's just for realignment, I believe, of this south access road. It just kind of shifted over a little bit, but none of the existing negative access easements from Veterans and 32nd Avenue have changed. Cedar Parkway also is retaining the negative access easements. There is a little portion up here that's being vacated for potential access in the future. And then we also added, or engineering made the recommendation to adding a negative access easement on these access roads off of 32nd and Veterans, just to allow or to prevent any backup of traffic into the arterial roads.
Okay, and the CUP for the off-premise sign, with these lot changes, it doesn't change the CUP, right? So
Correct.
The
Yeah,
only
so
place
that
they can have a sign is down at the bottom that's already there.
Correct. Yep. The sign for that CUP is existing, and that's located on the southwest corner. And that the conditions of that CUP are limited by that of the existing property today. And even though the property is changing, the area for that CUP would remain based on that permit and that lot.
They could put another board though in lot 3, is that correct?
I don't believe so. I think that conditional use permit was based on the design of that specific sign. And any additional sign would require another permit review if it meets the sign code requirements, but I believe that CUP was specific for that sign.
Yeah, and it'd have to meet the requirements of the conditional overlay or modification of the conditional overlay.
So I'm sorry, one more question to Mark. Is that what they came for a while back? Is that what John Crom and them came for, was adjustment to the conditional overlay to add boards? Is it whatever, 6 months ago they came in, or a year
Yeah,
ago
and I
they came
believe
in?
those for one,
One more, they were asking for more boards?
just that one sign.
Okay.
They requested one further north on Veterans, but
Okay,
that didn't come to fruition.
thank you.
And the conditional overlay does state that off-premise sign is a conditional use permit. So I believe, again, that conditional use permit, how it was written, was specific for that sign. Any additional signage would require its own conditional use permit.
Thank you.
Good questions. Any others? Seeing no others, we'll invite the applicant up. Please introduce yourself for the record.
Tim Gleason with Gleason Companies. I think Brad covered the majority of it. We're consolidating the conditional overlays across the site and creating 2 developable lots on the southeast corner for some end users. So looking forward to getting this piece of property going.
Any questions for the applicant? Seeing none, thanks for being here. Anyone else in the audience wish to speak on this item, either for or against? Anyone else here to speak on this item? Not, we'll close the public hearing. Commissioners, what are your wishes?
I'll make the motion per staff's recommendation.
The motion, is there a second?
Second.
Motion and second, any discussion? Seeing none, please take the roll.
Morgan,
Aye.
Schmidt,
Aye.
Tossa,
Aye.
Rosenberg,
Aye.
Gunkelman,
Aye.
Shui,
Aye.
Schneider.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you, Brad. Moving on to number 4. You want to introduce that one?
Sure. The next item on the agenda is called the 924 Townhomes Edition. This is a minor subdivision, zone change, and a planned unit development, PUD, master land use plan. This project is located in the Roosevelt neighborhood, which is one of our core neighborhoods in the city. And let's see, Broadway North is just here to the east. Sanford Hospital is located here. So it's pretty close to that, to the hospital location. And then there's a couple other projects around in this area too that had some development as recently as well. Here are 2 images. This is looking, this top one is looking southwest towards, again, 924. So there's 2 properties that are involved in this project, and both of these would be demolished and consolidated into the new plat that I'll talk about here in a little bit. The bottom image here is looking northwest. Again, that's the 916 property in the foreground. And 10th Avenue, this road here under construction is 10th Avenue North. Zoning for both properties currently is MR3, multi-dwelling residential. And the zoning change is specifically adding the PUD overlay over the base zoning district. So there is no change to the MR3. And with the, with the project, there's the minor subdivision, which is shown here on the screen. So this is creating 7 individual lots for the addition, and they'll have private access off of 10th Avenue North with an access easement down the middle, and that'll be access and private utilities easement. And separating the lots or platting the lots individually like this will allow each lot to have or be owner occupied for each unit. So this is the overall PUD master land use plan. And again, the information or the project information is 7 townhomes total. So there'll be 5 on the east, adjacent to 7th Street North. And then there'll be 2 located off of the alley on the west side of the property. Again, the lots will be platted individually so that they could be owner occupied. And then there is going to be 2 parking spaces. So one stall garage under each townhome, and then a spot for outside parking. And with planned unit developments, this is where it allows the owner to have a little bit of flexibility on how the land development code is applied. And ideally, this is where they need to still meet the requirements of the base zoning district, but some of those requirements are flexed a little bit, that the end result is a better product for the community and the city than would otherwise be allowed by right. And with this PUD, the flexed or the requirements that they're looking to get a little bit of flexibility on is the front and rear setbacks. And then there's also additional development standards that are allowed by right, which are called the alternative residential development options that I'll touch briefly here later in the presentation. So again, looking specifically at the PUD, this is the original plan that had come in front of the planning department, which is developable by right, so they wouldn't need any additional entitlements to complete this project. And you can see that the front setback currently has a 25 feet requirement, and the rear setback is 15 feet. But with this, it limited it restricted the development so that access to each individual lot would be from the public right of way. So you can see on 7th Street North that 3 driveways would be used to access the 3 southeast corner townhomes, and then the alley would provide access to the 2 rear homes. So with further discussion with the developer, ideas were talked about maybe applying the PUD and bringing the townhomes closer to the right-of-way and the alleyway, and then providing the access down the middle, limiting the amount of traffic that would be on the alley, and then also protecting that pedestrian realm along 7th Street North, so that you don't have driveways impacting the sidewalk. So then this was the final result as shown as the master land use plan. And again, the setback has been adjusted so that it's a 4-foot rear setback, and then there's a 4-foot front setback. And again, that access would be restricted only from 10th Avenue North. And again, the utilities and would also be provided through that easement. And additionally, with the PUD, the PUD adds additional standards such as site design, requiring high-quality materials, building form and style. Also with this PUD, we're looking at how the building looks on each side. So we're thinking about that 4-sided design, requiring that green space be required in the parking areas. And then should there be dumpsters, that is properly screened. These are pretty similar to the requirements that we find in our newer developments. But again, with that PUD, we can add those requirements to the base zoning district that would otherwise not be required. And then here are just some images or some elevations of showing the proposed project. And then, so this is looking east, so the rear of the buildings. And then some from the north side. And then the south. And then here are some renderings as well. So again, I think with that PUD, it really is trying to capture what is being shown as far as the design quality and making sure that is consistent throughout the PUD process. And then just to touch back on the attached housing. So these options, development options, are actually allowed by right. So there is no additional entitlement. So this is just kind of a reminder that this is there to allow these lots to be platted as they are. So with that alternate development options, individual lots within the development are exempt from lot width, lot area, and building coverage. Additionally, there's no interior side setback, so that's kind of showing that that's the attached side. But as a whole, these do need to meet the underlying zoning or base zoning requirements. And then now with the PUD, it allows that front and rear setbacks to be adjusted so that this project could meet the requirements. And again, the planned unit development process is a 3-step process. There's a zoning change with the PUD ordinance, and then the approval of the PUD master land use plan, which are being presented today. And then the final step is the PUD final plan, which is showing the final design, and then it's then it's presented again as a non-hearing item to your commission to approve that it is consistent with what was originally approved in the master land use plan. And then the architect Kelly Bauer with KBA Architects is with us today, as well as Andrew Thill with Lowry Engineering. to answer any of the commissioners' questions. The recommended motion is on your screen, which is slightly updated from the one in your packet. Just updates to the references, little typos. So pending any questions, that completes staff's presentation.
Thanks, Brad. Just a quick comment and a question for you. I like that slide showing what our job is now and then what our job is later too. It seems like we always have that question and it gets explained, so it's nice to have a visual for it. Yeah, that one. That's helpful. Appreciate that. And then the question for you is just, you know, when you're considering a change to the front setbacks, could you talk a little bit about what the purpose is of a front setback, and so we have a better understanding of, you know, why they're there and why we should be okay with them not being there or reduced, I guess?
Yes, I think it's context. You know, it depends a little bit on the context too. But generally, in the residential neighborhoods, that front setback is just allowing, you know, that distance between, you know, the property line and the building or the building, so that there's that public realm, which is the right of way, and then that semi-public realm to the actual private property, which is the front door or porch, or, you know, depending on that. So I think, you know, again, in your traditional neighborhoods, that would definitely be more preserved in how you want to approach those setback changes. In this development, or in this block, there has been, as mentioned before, there has been some development already. Across the street, there's been some multifamily or attached housing as well. And then to the north, there's some larger scale development. So I think with the scale of the building, is kind of shown here, that it still provides an individuality of a building, I guess you could say. And it, granted, the distance between the sidewalk or the right of way is lessened. The scale of the building and how it still looks like there's an individual door that approaches the building versus more of a massive building. It kind of brings that scale down so that setback isn't is detrimental to the development.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Brad?
Yeah, I'd like to ask a
go ahead.
question. Oh,
Go ahead.
okay. Is this kind of a distortion, or do those buildings, if you were going to look at them individually in terms of ownership, are they really high?
They're, well, and they're 3 stories tall, so I mean, they appear high. I mean, I think to the design, are you inquiring about the design of the building?
Well, yeah, and just, does that mean that there are a lot of internal stairways in each unit?
That might be a question for the architect. That might be better
Okay.
to answer that.
Okay,
Because the interior wasn't really part of the review
sure.
for this.
I'm
process.
just wondering, because it looks like it would be, difficult to be going up and down 3 levels. But, second question, what about, the homeowners themselves of the properties that'll be demolished?
So both properties, the subject properties are owned by FM Property Bros. So they own both the properties.
Have those been apartments then?
The one is, I believe, a 4-plex. And then the other one is a home that has been, I believe it's boarded up. I don't know if it was declared a dangerous building or not.
I think it's on a future city commission agenda, isn't it, coming up? And it hasn't been deemed yet, but it's gonna be.
Right,
I don't know.
I think yeah. So, yeah.
Has there been any commentary by surrounding neighbors?
There's been 2 inquiries. Both were, or one was more an inquiry of what the project was about, and the adjacent property owner was excited about it. So he provided his support. The Jefferson Neighborhood Association also reviewed this project again when it was early on in the stages, and there was again just more information about what the project was about. that, it's zoned MR3, that they're allowed to do that by right, the project, and that we were talking about applying a PUD to make it a better product in the end.
Did you mean Roosevelt neighborhood?
I'm sorry, Roosevelt, did I
Okay,
say?
Jefferson.
Jefferson, I'm sorry.
Okay, that's
Yes,
okay.
Roosevelt, I'm sorry, yeah,
All right, thank you.
yes.
Any other questions for Brad?
Just one question. You've got a reference that the LDC would require this to be rentals instead of owner occupied without the PUD. Can you just give us more background as to what the size difference is, why a rental would have been allowed under the LDC, and why we need to make this change? So you say that the lot sizes need to meet the land development code requirements, and the townhomes would be limited to rentals. So what's the nature of that limitation in the LDC?
I'm not sure.
Like, why would a rental be allowed, but
A rental property could be
An
allowed,
owned
or a single-family home.
Okay.
I'm sorry, there might have been a,
This application wouldn't restrict it to one use or the other. It could be owner occupied or rental.
okay?
Any other questions for Brad? I'm a little confused on Commissioner Shuey's question too, because I thought it read in here that one of the reasons they went to a PUD is because they wanted it to be owner occupied. And so I was kind of curious as well about if this just makes it more desirable. It's not necessarily a code issue.
Usually, when you see a plat where each house is individually platted, it's a good suggestion that that's going to be up for individual ownership. Now, individual ownership could certainly rent those out as they sell, but it could be for owner occupied too. And it's based on financing for this level of house. If this plat would have been one lot, one subdivision, probably looking, and us not talking about condominium association, you're probably looking at more of a rental.
Okay, maybe you guys can just take a look at the background section in here and help us clarify that some other time. Any other questions for Brad? Seeing none, is the applicant here? Invite you up to the podium. So are you guys actually property brothers, or? Just kidding.
For the record, I joined after they named it. So I had no say.
Introduce yourself for the record.
My name is Brandon Rayboyne. I'm kind of taking point for the ownership group. And then we have Andrew Thill with Lowry Engineering, and then Kelly Bauer, our architect.
Any questions for the applicant? Yeah, go ahead.
I do. Typically, we don't ask how much you would sell these for. And the reason that I ask is, the housing study has identified we need more housing, more affordable housing. So I'm wondering how close we're getting to the price point of what people can afford.
Yeah, and obviously housing attainability and affordability is always kind of the goal.
Right.
So with this, I guess leading to Mr. Shuey's question, in my opinion, we can get more units. So there's the land acquisition cost, and that gets spread across whatever you build there. So with this, we can make these houses much more affordable by doing this PUD and be able to sell them off individually. Whereas in order to sell them, secondary market financing and different appraisal stipulations from banks come into play, and they need to have no association. If there's an association, there's a boatload of more steps in order to sell it with a loan. So you're really looking at only a cash buyer if it gets parceled individually. So with this allows us to spread it with the PUD, gets us to have individual units that are open for sale that lenders can loan on, essentially. And so with this 7 units, our goal is to keep it in quote unquote affordable pricing. With that in mind, the higher design standards that are going to be required, up that to a degree. And then, but it does spread the land acquisition cost across more units. So our goal is to have this be affordable housing or attainable housing.
Thanks for that clarification. Any other questions for the applicant?
Yeah, I have a question. It was my same question as to Brad. it looks like, you know, the height of the building is really high. And so does that mean that, of course, that's not what we're making a decision upon, but are there really a lot of stairways?
Yeah, so we have, I'm a part of the other development, I guess, developments underway to the north. So we have 6 units that are the exact same kind of a tuck under garage. And the stair, you have to get up there. And so there's stairs from the garage to the main level on the 2nd story, and then stairs again to go up to the 3rd story. With that in mind, yes, there are stairs, but that's the best way to get the amount of living spaces needed. Otherwise, you'd have a 600 square foot deal there, and it just wouldn't work. So with the 3rd story on there, it adds another 2 bedrooms in there, which allows it to be a 3-bedroom, 2-bedroom type of unit, depending which kind of asset class you use. So with that, I think it's really important to have that 3rd level. Otherwise, you have just a 1-stall garage size house. And tiny houses are great, but they don't really sell well, and the cost is pretty high. So it adds an affordability on that 3rd level.
Sure. Well, one of the things I would think about too is accessibility. That would be limiting accessibility for a certain population. Has that been a concern of yours at all?
Not at all. No, the units we have to the north, those have all rented incredibly well. Our demographic has usually been young professionals that work at Sanford, graduate students that are at NDSU, and people that don't want to live downtown specifically, but want to live adjacent with nicer units, bigger garages, nicer amenities, but you can park and take your dog outside. So we're kind of playing in that fringe between. So our demographic has been more of those folks.
Okay, and then coming up in the past case, the snow removal, is that accountable here?
Yeah, as it is a private roadway, I believe that would be part of our responsibility, and the city just does the main thoroughfares.
I see. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
Thank you. Any other questions for the applicant? Seeing none, thank you all for coming. Anybody else want to add anything, I guess, while you're up here?
Rocky, no more jokes about naming. Right?
You can't promise that.
Yeah. I can only do so much. Yeah. Well, thank you. Anyone else in the audience wish to add anything before or against? Is there anybody else here to speak on this? Yeah, Brad, go ahead.
Just to provide clarification, I read that part in the background. Excuse me. And that was in relation to the plat. So if there were left individual properties or combined, they wouldn't be individually owned, so that that they couldn't have multiple owners. So I'm sorry, that was referenced into the plat.
And then I can speak to the PUD and why the boundary scoots closer to the street.
Sure.
There's no driveway. Driveway's in the back, so it just scoots proportionally closer to the main thoroughfare, but doesn't actually affect the sidewalk type setback. So it feels closer, but there's no driveway on that side. So
Great. Anybody else in the audience want to speak to this item? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Commissioners, any other discussion or motion?
See, this looks very creative with the change to the parking arrangement as well too. So we didn't have the 3 driveways on there, and as a former Roosevelt resident as well too, to have something that's intentionally looking for ownership versus rental seems like a good strengthening for the neighborhood.
Yeah, I'll say I live about 2.5 blocks from here off 10th Avenue myself, and I've never loved that it's MR zoning along there because I worry about the neighborhood and how far that goes, and this seems like pretty good transitional neighborhood into a single-family neighborhood from downtown side. And there's 2 other projects exactly like this one adjacent to it, so it makes a lot of sense to me.
With that, I'll make the motion to accept the findings of staff as presented.
There we
Second.
go. Motion and second. Any other discussion? Seeing none, please take the roll.
Schmidt,
Aye.
Tassa,
Aye.
Dunkelman,
Aye.
Rosenberg,
Aye.
Morgan,
Aye.
Shui,
Aye.
Schneider.
Aye. Motion passes. Moving on to number 5. We haven't scared her away yet, so welcome back.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Today I will be presenting item number 5, Agassiz First Edition. This is a minor subdivision. This subject property is located at 602 and 610 39th Street North. 601 and 609 40th Street North. For reference, this is Interstate 29, Main Avenue. And this is the case, New Holland. The image on the left was taken facing the southeast, looking across the subject property. Please note that these structures in the back are not part of the proposal. The right image is taken facing the southwest from across the subject property at the intersection of 7th Avenue North and 39th Street North. The top two images are of an unpermitted structure. The plat will not be recorded until the building is removed or the plan to remediate the building has been approved by the building official. Sean Orodnik is here if you have any questions. The bottom two images are of a legally non-conforming structure. When the building was permitted in 1992, the zoning district was M2, or heavy industrial, with no setbacks. Then, when the new land development code was implemented in 1998, this changed the zoning district to general industrial with 50-foot front and street side setbacks. This request does not make the structure any more or less conforming. The current zoning is GI, general industrial, and no zone changes proposed. The plat entitlement is a request to replat lots 1, 2, 23, and 24 of Block 2 of E.G. Clapp First Edition into a two-lot subdivision entitled Agassiz First Edition. To date, staff has received no inquiries regarding the entitlement. Brian Pattengale is here on behalf of the applicant to answer any questions. Staff's recommendation is for approval as stated in the staff report and shown on the screen. And that concludes staff's presentation.
Thank you, Elena. Any questions? Seeing none, is the applicant here? Wish to add anything? Mr. Pattengale again?
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Brian Pattengale, Houston Engineering. I just wanted to touch base on that little unpermitted building. That was constructed and dealt with prior to the current ownership taking ownership of the property. It really was only discovered once we started to actually do the plat process. We're currently working with the owners about how to address that, whether it be sort of a demolition of the building or removal of the building and relocation to another site. It's essentially a semi-permanent structure. There are no foundations for that building. It is simply set on top of some concrete blocks that use it as the anchor in the foundation. So it is able to be disassembled and relocated. And like I said, we're currently working with the owners to address how to deal with that and when, whether it's either, like I said, disassemble the building and relocate it to and permanent under a correct site, or just take it down and sort of store it in the interim.
Any other questions for the applicant? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Does anyone else in the audience wish to speak either for or against this item? Anyone else here for this? Nope, seeing none. We'll close the public hearing. Commissioners, what are your wishes?
I'll make the motion per staff's recommendation.
The motion, is there a second?
Second.
Motion and second, any discussion? Seeing none, please take the roll.
Tossa.
Aye.
Gunkelman.
Aye.
Shuey.
Aye.
Morgan.
Aye.
Schmidt.
Aye.
Rosenberg.
Aye.
Schneider.
Aye, motion passes. Moving on to number 6. You want to introduce that for us?
Agenda item number 6 is Northern Cheyenne Land 4th Edition. This is a minor subdivision located at 1810 and 1821 Cheyenne Loop North. For reference, here is Interstate 29, 19th Avenue North, and here is the horse park. The top left image was looking northeast across the subject property. The structure that you see here in the image will be in the confinement of the plat and meets all the requirements of the Land Development Code. The image in the top right corner was taken looking southwest across the subject property. The image in the bottom left was taken looking northwest across the subject property from the west side of Cheyenne Loop. The image in the bottom right-hand corner was taken looking east across the subject property to looking east across Cheyenne Loop North. The current zoning is LI, limited industrial, and no zone changes proposed. The entitlement request is to replat Lot 2, Block 1, and Lot 5, Block 2 of Northern Cheyenne Land 3rd Edition into a 3-lot minor subdivision entitled Cheyenne or Northern Cheyenne Land 4th Edition. There are also negative access easements that are left over from the previous plat, located along either side of Cheyenne Loop North that will also be vacated with this plat. To date, staff has received no inquiries regarding the entitlement. Andrew Thill from Lowry Engineering is here on behalf of the applicant to answer any questions that you might have. Staff's recommendation is for approval as stated in the staff report and shown on your screen. And that concludes staff's presentation.
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, is the applicant here? If you could introduce yourself for the record, please.
Good afternoon, Andrew Thill with Lowry Engineering. Just a quick background on why we're doing this. The main reason is when some of the work to realign 19th Avenue was done and this was replatted, there was some leftover pieces of negative access easement that when that was replatted were not vacated. And because they technically weren't vacated, they still exist so that our clients can't put driveways into their properties. And so half of this request is more just of a cleanup item to remove those negative access easements. And then our client who owns the land west of Cheyenne Loop, while we were proceeding with this replat, wanted to split that lot kind of as a separate item. So half of it's more cleanup and then getting an extra lot out of it.
Any questions for the applicant? Not, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Anyone else in the audience wish to speak to this item? Anybody else for or against want to add anything? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Commissioners, what are your wishes?
Move to approve as presented.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and second. Any discussion? If not, please take the roll.
Rosenberg.
Aye.
Morgan.
Aye.
Shuey.
Aye.
Dunkelman.
Aye.
Tassa.
Aye.
Schmidt.
Aye.
Schneider.
Aye. Motion passes. Thanks, Elena. We'll invite Luke up for number 7 on the agenda.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Luke Mormon with the Planning Department. Item 7 on your agenda is Radio 2nd Edition. This is located at 5245 through 5287 Veterans Boulevard South. And in that range is about 20 addresses for the proposed buildings. And this, to give some context, this is 52nd Avenue South and then Veterans Boulevard towards the east side of the property. The applicant is requesting a conditional use permit for industrial service and warehouse uses in the GC General Commercial Zone on Lot 2, Block 1, Radio 2nd Edition. This is the common CUP request here with industrial uses in the General Commercial Zone. As you can see from the aerial imagery, there's other industrial uses and in the surrounding properties. And then, as you can see with the site photo, this is facing southwest from the private drive on Lot 2. And some of the condo units are currently under construction. The zoning is GC, General Commercial, no zone changes proposed. But again, this is a common CUP request for industrial uses with the surrounding general commercial zones. For the site plan shown, it's already permitted It has some buildings currently under construction as they were permitted under uses already allowed with the general commercial zone. And those are allowed by right. And future new construction and changes of use will need to go through the permitting process where it will be reviewed for compliance with the land development code and this CUP if it's approved. The CUP conditions shown on the screen. These are common verbiage we use to protect the surrounding context for industrial uses in the general commercial zone. And staff has received no inquiries in response to the project. The recommendation is shown on screen. Staff finds all criteria to be met and are recommending approval with the conditions shown. And the project representative Kyle Bartram is here to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Luke. I guess I have one question for you. Could you just expound a little bit on what the difference is between light industrial and then what we are doing here?
Yeah, so I guess limited industrial would allow all industrial uses, so warehouse, manufacturing, production, industrial service, several other ones, I believe. But yeah, the main two that the applicant was requesting was industrial service and warehouse, which are kind of typical for contractor, for example, which was included with the with the application. I do have that if you want to receive or hear the applicant's words to summarize it, but he said the CUP is to solidify uses classified as industrial service and industrial warehouse in the event that that type of business intends on purchasing one of these buildings. So that was kind of the intent of leaving it as general commercial, matching the surroundings, and then just allowing these couple of uses just in case business wanted to move in.
Sounds good. Any other questions for staff?
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Luke, did we not, when this originally came to us as an entire development, did we not allow it to be industrial?
Correct. It was just plain general commercial.
No, but we stopped it because we didn't want it. They wanted industrial and we did not allow it to be industrial. Is that correct?
I don't believe any past entitlements, but correct me if I'm wrong.
General commercial was recommended on this based on the fact of the city growing around the subdivision to the west that was platted outside our jurisdiction a long time ago. So keeping in the theme with general commercial, that application that or I don't believe it even made it to planning commission. They were inquiring about straight industrial.
Didn't Goldmark bring that in?
Speculatively.
Okay.
And we, based on the fact that there wasn't any limited industrial or general industrial in the vicinity, our recommendation was to go with general commercial.
Right.
And as they had a project, then they would present a conditional use permit for industrial service and just in general commercial. That was that history.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, is the applicant here? If you could introduce yourself for the record.
Good afternoon. I am Kyle Bartram with MBN Engineering on behalf of the owner. And it's my understanding that this request is being made because the owner is looking to leave the option open to including a general contractor as a tenant in this space.
Thank you. Any questions for the applicant? Go ahead.
So that's what you're looking for as a general contractor? So you have to be industrial to be general contractor? It's not limited light industrial, it's full industrial?
Our land development code kind of defines a general contractor within the industrial service use.
Okay, I guess my concern is, I just want to make sure that there isn't full production of things happening in the space because it's pretty tight back there. There's not a lot of room to move stuff around, and if you're trying to do manufacturing, or I saw that there was a restriction of some hazardous chemicals, but I mean, are you going to be doing body shops? And I mean, you can do anything with industrial, pretty much. There's a lot of flexibility with that. Are we sure that that's the place to have that deal with? Is it tight enough to protect the neighborhood and the area, especially as tight as these units are?
So to clarify, a body shop, for example, would be more of a vehicle service, vehicular service, which I believe is allowed under general commercial already. But manufacturing and production is not an allowed use. That would be a additional industrial use that would have to be permitted through a conditional use permit. And then there's an additional provision in the conditions. Number 3 says no outdoor storage of equipment or supplies. So that would kind of limit it to the internal work of each shop or building.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant? Seeing none, thanks for being here. Anyone else in the audience wish to add anything? Anybody else here on this item? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. I guess I just had one question. We've done similar things all along 52nd in this general commercial area, right? I mean, there's a cabinet maker and some other general contractor things that have come in. So, in our history, it seems similar, unless you could tell me otherwise. So. Anybody have any other discussion, or you want to make a motion?
I'll make the motion to accept the findings of staff with the following conditions listed.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and second. Any other discussion? Seeing none, please take the roll.
Gunkelman,
Aye.
Shui,
Aye.
Tassa,
Aye.
Rosenberg,
Aye.
Morgan,
Aye.
Schmidt,
Aye.
Schneider.
Aye. Motion passes. Move on to number 8. Ask Brad back up here.
Yes, item number 8, Rocking Horse East Second Edition is also a conditional use permit for industrial services and warehouse use in general commercial. This project or property is located just east of Veterans Boulevard here, and yeah, on the screen. So here are some images of the subject property. This is facing north, across from 51st Street South. And then the bottom image is facing southerly across from Veterans Park. And then you'll notice that there is this multi-use trail, and then there's a small park and playground just off to the east, or to the right of the image here. And the zoning is general commercial. And the applicant is seeking a conditional use permit, which is consistent with several of these properties in the vicinity. Also have conditional use permits for industrial use. And with this conditional use permit, there actually is existing CUP on the property for industrial use that was approved back in 2018. One of the limitations of the CUP was that it did not allow outdoor storage of equipment or supplies. So currently there's a permit that was just approved for development on this property that has a use of industrial services. So with that, they're looking, with this conditional use permit, they're looking to add outdoor storage as an authorized use. And there is subsection R of the LDC, which is use standards, that already creates those additional restrictions for industrial use that's happening within the general commercial zoning district. So outdoor storage is already, I guess, has standards for outdoor storage by right. So this is just kind of going back to more of what the LDC allows with a conditional use permit. One of the conditions that are added with this is that outdoor storage be located in the rear of the property, and that the screening must be in good condition, and that they maintain it properly. And then here's a site plan. So the building, again, this is from the building permit. The industrial use is shown in this building, which meets the subsection R of the use requirements. And then in the rear of the property to the north would be the potential area for outdoor storage. There already is a landscape buffer easement in place that will also have to be met And again, that permit was just approved recently, so those requirements have been met. And then here's a floor plan of the building itself, and it's just kind of indicating the amount of area for the industrial use. And I believe that this is more of, again, that contractor application. And then the recommended motion is slightly different than what is in your packet. With that permitting process to allow them to start that permit or get that permit approval, we recognize that the original CUP was valid and they were able to use that, even though that they couldn't show outdoor storage. And then during the process, the entitlement process, we advertised publicly that only warehouse and industrial services were a part of this conditional use permit, even though their existing conditional use permit allows all of the industrial uses. So that's that manufacturing, production, and wholesale sales. So the applicant was okay striking those from the conditional use permit and then just restricting this conditional use permit to warehouse and industrial services in general commercial. And that won't impact their intent of using that property, again, as it's more contractor, which is listed as industrial services. These conditions as well are similar to the ones that you just approved in the last item. And the applicant representative, Matt with Moore Engineering, is with us this afternoon if you have any questions. Pending questions for staff, that completes presentation.
Thanks, Brad. Just one question. I don't recall, and I didn't look it up, but back in 2018, so when we passed last time, we didn't allow the outdoor storage. Was that on recommendation of staff and our opinions changed as staff, or was that just what they wanted before and they're asking for something different?
Again, I think the CUPs are site or context specific. I didn't see anything in that history of why outdoor storage was removed, but that was specific to a plan or a site plan that was presented to staff at the time. Okay. Unless there's additional history, again, looking into the staff reports back then, it didn't specify specifically why. I know that there's residential that's close by to this area, but again, this CUP is pretty consistent with the adjacent properties. And again, that subsection R does have residential protection standards in addition that would limit the impacts that it may have on residential zone properties.
That works. I just wanted to clarify because it's good to get smarter and change our minds too. And so just wondering if we learned something different or if it's just the way it was. Go ahead.
Brad, on the site plan, that drawing labeled C-602, are we approving this for that whole piece of property or just the one with the building?
Yeah, sorry. The 5353 is this top property. So there's actually two properties here on this site plan. And it would just be the conditional use permit for this top
piece,
west property.
Okay.
Correct.
Just clarifying that.
Brad, I've got a question on item 3 in the recommended motion. Can you elaborate on the screening? It also says screening must remain in good condition. Is that screening a landscaped screening or is it an opaque fencing?
The subsection R requires an opaque fence for
Okay.
outdoor storage. Yep.
Thank you.
Any other questions? So I have one more, maybe it's a random question that someone will glare at me about, but do we have a definition for what graffiti is versus art on the outside of the screening? I mean,
Good question.
what's the difference between graffiti and murals at some point, you know? Just curious. How do we deem something? Is it like graffiti is when you don't want it and art's when you purposely want it? Is that?
I think the fence, it would be on private property. So I think it would be up to the owner to determine whether it's appropriate or not for the adjacent neighborhood. But generally speaking, I believe if the applicant can confirm this, but I believe it's going to be a white maintenance-free fence. So I think any kind of pictures or art, I mean, I guess if it's the approval of the owner, maybe it could be, but yeah.
Oh, the other thing is that I think that a mural is usually something that's commissioned and approved, whereas graffiti is something that happens randomly.
Uncommissioned.
Yes.
Banksies aren't usually commissioned either, and they're pretty well thought of. So, just curious. Anyways, that's all. Any other questions? Yeah, go ahead.
Sure, and this is just for my own understanding. Back to the screening that's required. Is that screening required to be fully enclosing the outdoor storage area, or only sides that are, I guess, closest to the residential zoning to the north?
I don't have this specific section in front of me, but I believe it has to be screened from, yeah, I'll defer just a minute.
Okay.
So all outdoor storage areas must be screened with an opaque fence, building wall, berm, or landscape buffer that is at least 6 feet in height. And that's kind of the limitation. And then there's 2 subsections where the coverage of the outdoor storage based on the property, and then the that it can't be located in the front setback. So I think how we would interpret it is that outdoor screening would have, or the outdoor storage would have to be screened from view.
Okay.
So from the public right of way, or from the the rear of the property. Because that multi-use path, I think, was kind of play a role.
Any other questions for staff? Seeing none, is the applicant here and wishes to add anything?
Good afternoon. Matt Prokniak with Moore Engineering on behalf of Cheyenne Condos. To address the question that was just asked, the intent of the applicant is to fully enclose the proposed storage area if approved with that 6-foot white maintenance-free fence, in addition to having the landscape buffer shown on the north. So, and the intent for the storage area is to store building materials, maybe some equipment that's associated with the proposed business, but nothing above the screening height.
Any questions for the applicant? If not, thank you for being here. Anyone else in the audience wish to speak to this item? Anyone else here wants anything for or against? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Commissioners, what are your wishes?
I'll make the motion per staff's recommendation.
Motion, is there a second?
Second.
Motion and second. Any other discussion? Seeing none, please take the roll.
Shuey.
Aye.
Tassa.
Aye.
Schmidt.
Aye.
Rosenberg.
Aye.
Morgan.
Aye.
Gunkelman.
Aye.
Schneider.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you, Brad. Invite Donald back up here. Do you want to introduce yourself again too, just for the record?
Yes, sir. Donald Kress with the Department of Planning and Development. Continuing the CUP theme here this afternoon, we have one that's not industrial here today. This is a conditional use permit for group living in the SR2 single dwelling residential zone. This property is located at 2208 26th and a half Avenue South. For location, this is 25th Street South and Row Farms, a Fargo Park District property. 22nd Street South. Here's a close-up here. This is a single-family residence. Here's some pictures of it here from yesterday, just facing the house here, and then looking westerly down the street. This is the house here. That's the same pickup truck. This property is owned by Vocational Training Center Incorporated. They work with developmentally disabled adults, and this would be the zoning here is SR2, single dwelling residential. Their request is to allow group living for 4 of their residents who are, again, the developmentally disabled folks that they work with. I think they have some other operations here like that in Fargo. Since they're asking to have more than 3 unrelated people in a single residential dwelling unit, they would need a CUP to do so. They own the building. They've owned it since April. To address some of the concerns that came up at a similar recent one, here's some floor plans of the property here, upper floor on the, or main floor on your left, and basement on the right there. The parking situation, I know that's always a concern of us. We've talked, it's stated in your staff report there too, based on the information that the applicant has provided and what we've done in other recent cases, the residents don't drive. And there is a provision on there, as you see that is a double garage there, and they do have some additional space on either side here, parking space here. But their staff would be 1 to 2 people when the residents are there. The applicant, Steve Peterson, of Operations Director for VTC, can explain to that more in detail of how that works. But staff does not feel that additional parking spaces are required because of the nature of the residents and the caregivers that come there. There's never more than 2 at a time, so there's 2 in the garage and 1 in the driveway. They may have a van as well, but they could keep that parked in the garage, so that would not compromise the parking situation there. Commissioners were also, in a similar recent one, commented on how all this has to come together. Since this is a group living situation, there are slightly different fire code and building code requirements for it. And we try to get these all to come together, but you can't quite do all at once because you're not going to put too much money into fire code and building code upgrades if you don't know you're not going to get this conditional use permit. So in our recommended conditions here, as you see, we say that the conditional use permit will not become effective until the city has granted a certificate of occupancy appropriate for group living use and until applicable North Dakota state requirements have been met. Because far outside of what we do here in this commission, the state licenses these facilities through the Department of Health and Human Services, and whatever their process is, we are not part of their process, but they won't be able to use this as a home for the residential home for the adults there, developmentally disabled adults, until all those have been met. So it all has to come together on that. Again, other conditions recommended here, and these are in your staff report as well, are if the property is transferred, the new owner must apply for a conditional use permit, and the maximum number of residents is limited to 4. We did get a couple of phone inquiries. One's noted in your staff report. I got another one a couple hours ago. Neighbor was just wondering what was going on. And then we did receive 1 opposition letter that is included in your packet. I don't know if Mr. Law is here. Are you Mrs. Law? No. Mr. Law does not appear to be here today. I'm actually acquainted with him from long ago. So our recommended motion, staff's recommended motion, is stated in your staff report and shown on the screen. And that concludes staff's presentation. Again, Steve Peterson, Operations Director for VTC, is with us this afternoon and may wish to address the commission and go into more detail on how the operation works. Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you, Donald. Any questions for Donald?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
In the past, when other such homes have been established, has there been an outcome in terms of the neighborhood opposition?
Well, I have not done one for developmentally disabled before. You might remember a couple months ago we had one for the agency foster care home where there was some neighborhood opposition. Again, we've only gotten 1 letter so far in terms of the opposition here. And as usual, everyone was noticed. And here, this is a completely developed neighborhood, unlike that situation where there weren't really too many people there. This is a fully developed neighborhood. One of the residents who called says he's been there for over 20 years. So, like I said, we've just gotten the 1 opposition letter so far, ma'am.
Okay, I was just kind of interested in the history of, Mark, do you have any recollections of past cases?
I would say historically, group living is allowed by right in MR zoning districts, and most of the projects have been created at a larger scale in MR zoning districts. It's just been very recent then that organizations have been identifying SR zoning districts which require a conditional use permit to locate these type of facilities.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
One more question, Donald.
Yes, sir.
They bought this house in April. Are we, I'm confused again because we're putting the cart in front of the horse. They
Okay,
buy-
no, I know what you're gonna say, I think.
Okay, put the word.
They need, let me try it. Let's see if I can do it, sir. They need a conditional use permit for 4. They don't need one for 3. So even if your commission did not grant this permit, they could operate with 3 as they are.
Okay,
Does
yes.
that help you?
Yeah,
Okay. And again, Mr. Peterson can go into some more detail on that number.
okay.
Any other questions? I'll invite the applicant up. If you could introduce yourself for the record, please.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Steve Peterson. I am the Operations Director with Vocational Training Center. As Donald had mentioned, there are some other things that we have been doing in the community for many years. We are a local nonprofit that we have been around since the early 60s. Our main building where we provide pre-vocational training services and day habilitation services lives right in the Hawthorne neighborhood. We are very proud of the fact that we go out of our way to be good neighbors to our neighborhood residents. We always look for our neighbors to make sure that we're going above and beyond what most people would maybe do for their neighbors. When we've done other projects, we take into account what the neighborhood wants, and we're respectful of what their wishes. The residential component of our program, that is relatively new for us. We've been doing this since 2020, and that was based on a need from the families that we were supporting, that they asked us, hey, would you guys ever consider starting residential? So we had a request. We wanted to meet that need. Why did we specifically look for this property? We didn't specifically look in this neighborhood. What we were looking for was a property that could allow for one-level living in the situation that we had someone that wanted to receive residential services from us. And so we were looking for something that was accessible. This property, the previous owner had a daughter that had a physical disability. This house was set up with a main floor laundry. The upstairs restroom had a walk-in shower. The house previously had some homemade accessibility ramps that were not up to code. Our residents that have expressed an interest in this home, currently they do not have physical disabilities. Not all disabilities are physical disabilities. In the event that we had someone that wanted to move into this home and it was the right home for them, we could very easily add ramps that would be to code for ADA, which we are a disability organization, so we always look at those things. There was a question about why did we buy the house before we had the conditional use permit? It is true that we could rent up to 3 individuals and operate without the conditional use permit. Our organization, we always want to do everything above board, so we're always going through the proper channels. So we purchased the house and we knew we wanted to rent to 4 people to make this house make sense for us. So we applied for the conditional use permit. I've been working with Fire Marshal there's a residential sprinkler requirement that we would need for this property. So if we are granted this conditional use permit, we will go forward with installing that into the property. That is a requirement by the state of North Dakota for group home living, which we would be inspected by the state of North Dakota yearly. The state of North Dakota doesn't explicitly state that a group home must have a sprinkler system, but that it must comply with the local ordinance. The International Fire Code that I believe was adopted by City of Fargo a couple years ago says that a group home must have the residential fire sprinkler system. So we've got the wheels in motion to put that in, to make sure the house is as safe as possible. We've done some electrical upgrades already. So just a lot of things to make sure the house is set up to provide a safe living environment for the folks that want to live with us.
Thank you for the additional information. Any questions for the applicant?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
I was just wondering what the turnover is in homes such as this.
So for us, this will be our second home. Our first property is a duplex in the South High neighborhood. We started renting that in December of 2021. Currently, the two gentlemen that moved into that home that month we opened it, they are still residing at the duplex. And then the other individuals that have moved in have remained. So we're so new into this program, we haven't had turnover. We anticipate that the residents that move in to our building or our home will stay there for a long time. But I don't have enough data from our program specifically to say how quickly people move in and out of there. It is not our intent to have new people constantly going in and out. The draw for a home like this is to provide as normal of a living environment as we can for the people we're supporting. So it's a nice neighborhood. Roll Farm is close. The bus route is close. I'm not sure if there may be a question coming up about, the staffing, how many people are going to be there. At our other property, we have 1 to 2 staff that are there when the residents are on site. Currently, our residents, they either attend our day program or they have jobs in the community. So it's typically staffing is there nights and weekends. We have a nice big driveway at this property that we're confident our staff can park on our property and not take up neighborhood streets. There may be, 3 to 4 cars during shift change, but then it'll quickly go back down to the 2 staff that are typically there.
Thank you. Any other questions? Not, thank you for coming out.
I have a
Go ahead.
question. The person, Bill Law, who wrote the letter in opposition, he was talking in the letter about potential noise and congestion and having sought out a home in that neighborhood because it's quiet. Is that going to be an issue? And secondly, so if you're renting to your clients, then in some cases like the first one, then there isn't supervision 24-hour?
Okay, so for the first question for noise, we are very aware of, anyone could be concerned about noise. At our current property, we have had no noise complaints in the coming up on 2 years that we've been renting it. We have staff there when people are present. That is part of our residential program. So there will not be a time when someone is at home alone without a staff. With our residential license through the state of North Dakota, we have to provide supervision for our individuals. So they're renting a bedroom in our home, and our staff are assisting with working on the daily living skills, helping prepare meals, make sure they're able to do their laundry, those types of things.
So then the staff would most likely be there overnight.
Yes, we would have staff. There will always be a staff person when people are there. So our residents are sleeping, our staff are doing other things, making sure the home is kept up, doing our required data charting on the people we're supporting.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else here that wishes to speak on this item, either for or against? Anybody else wish to speak on this item? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Commissioners, what are your wishes?
Move to approve as presented.
Second.
Motion second, any discussion? Seeing none, take the roll.
Morgan.
Aye.
Shuey.
Aye.
Gunkelman.
Aye.
Tossa.
Aye.
Schmidt.
Aye.
Rosenberg.
Aye.
Schneider.
Aye. Motion passes.
Thank you,
Donald.
Commissioners.
We'll ask Megan up for D1,
Good
just in
afternoon.
anticipation of a D2.
Good afternoon, Chair and Commissioners. This is agenda item D1. This is not a public hearing item. This is EOLA second edition. This is a PUD final plan for your review. This is on lots 3 and 5 of Block 1 EOLA second edition. I'll also note that due to lot numbering and technical requirements, those lots might change. So just wanted to note that it might be ultimately different in your staff report. This is located at 4410, 4415, and 4448 24th Avenue South and 4417 26th Avenue South. In July and September of this summer, your commission saw a handful of entitlements, including a plat, a zoning change, as well as a PUD master plan. Those 3 items were approved last night at the City Commission meeting, and this is the final step in a PUD. As you saw earlier with Brad's presentation, there's three steps to a PUD: the ordinance, the master plan, and the final plan, and that's what's before you today. Up on your screen are some images shown of, if you are up in this corner, of the east part of 24th Avenue South. The top image shows looking towards 45th Street. You can see the mocked buildings under construction. The image below shows a view southwesterly into the property, which is where the water park and hotel is proposed to be located. This is just a quick image of zoning of what's happening out here. This is zone general commercial with a PUD overlay. What you're reviewing tonight essentially is the final plan, and your criteria is for viewing consistency with the approved master plan. So up on your screen is the approved PUD master land use plan that the City Commission approved at last night's meeting. And this here is the PUD final plan. And just to show them side by side for your reference. Also for just your reference, included are some elevation plans of showing what the project is intended to look like. The recommended motion on your screen is slightly different in that in your staff report, there was a contingency based on City Commission approval. That has since happened. And so with your approval, I'd recommend, if you want to move forward, using the one that's on your screen, since all of the entitlements yesterday at the City Commission have been approved. So with that, staff's recommending approval. Blake Nybakken with Epic Companies is here if you have any questions, and that concludes staff's presentation.
Thank you, Megan. Did Brad not give you his fancy new slide that he made?
No, I know. He didn't tell me anything about it, so.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Megan, I just have a question about process. So when this is approved this way, if they don't build that parking lot on the north side, can they get a CO then? I mean, what's the restriction on this?
So, and I can let Mr. Nybakken talk about that in a little bit more detail, but what is intended to be constructed today is what you see up on the screen on the right. And so with the water park and with the hotel.
I guess it's more a general question of every time we see one of these, is when we approve this, does this mean that the water park can't be built without that parking lot on the north side?
What they intend to approve right now is all the surface level parking that you see on the
Right.
east side with the water park and the hotel. If with the PUD master plan that was approved yesterday and that your commission saw allows for the construction of the ramp without having to revise the PUD, but they would have to come back in with with the final plan if that ramp comes online. And so your commission might see this again if that ramp happens. Otherwise, today what you're reviewing and approving is the surface.
Any other questions for Megan? Seeing none? It's not a public hearing, right? So, yeah. Motion?
Make a motion to accept the findings and recommendation of staff.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, you want to take the roll?
Dunkelman.
Aye.
Morgan.
Aye.
Rosenberg.
Aye.
Shui.
Aye.
Schmidt.
Aye.
Tasa.
Aye.
Schneider.
Aye, the motion passes. Anybody else have anything? We'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion, is there a second? Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nope. We're adjourned.